All right, well, let's start with the main event. Let's talk that. We have Tetsuya Naito, the G1 winner, going up against Sanada for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. As you said, this the story here is very much about Naito and him. I think in a storyline sense, but also really like in a meta sense too. Back in the dome, wrestling for the title again, and by all accounts, yeah, I think he's going to walk out with that championship. I mean,
if he doesn't,
it'd be the ultimate troll job to not do that.
I mean, it also wouldn't be the first time though.
And it would.
I mean, like that's why people are freaked out, because they've done this before where it looks so obvious that Naito is walking out and he didn't. But I don't think there's enough time with Naito to cycle this back, especially because New Japan, it mostly works on kind of 2-year cycles, not just like a single year. So I would be pretty I'd be bummed, and I'm not a Naito guy, but like I'd be bummed if we stretch this out.
Yeah, no, I think it has to go Naito's way here. I mean, everything points in that direction, and and I think this has a couple interesting things going on with it. I mean, one is obviously the Naito factor. I mean, he's a top star in the company. I think that like he's kind of, with the crossover with AEW, I think he's kind of faded into the background a little bit, as far as like a tip-top star, because you've had Okada come over and Naito's come over too. But I mean, Okada's come over in a major singles match capacity. Jay White, same thing. Will Ospreay, same thing. And Naito's been kind of, on the outside looking in, as far as like that, as being like a lead guy from New Japan to cross over. But man, he's a huge star for that company. Like, they can't go overstated just how big of a star he is. So this is an obvious spot for him. Sanada's in his first Wrestle Kingdom main event, correct?
Yes.
And so that will be interesting. Like, Sanada, I think he's been, or at least in my opinion, he's been like the king of the, he's flirted with some really, really strong matches with some really strong opponents. But outside of that, he's like a strong, like B player. And now he's in a slot where he's got to deliver like on an A level. So I'm really interested to see how this match goes for all of those reasons combined. I'm taking Naito here. It seems like, you have to pull the trigger on it. And I'm not even going to hedge on my confidence on that. It's going to be Naito, folks. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. This will be Naito's 5th Tokyo Dome main event. That includes the Muto show the Muto retirement show this past February. So his 4th Wrestle Kingdom main event, I guess, technically. So he's the guy. And you're right. Like, it's so interesting because I think the core American New Japan audience that's been with New Japan since, say, 2016, 2017, when things really started to heat up, they're Naito people. Like, that's a Naito group of people. Naito brought them in, and Naito wasn't even on the first Forbidden Door card. Right. So exactly. and for a long time he wasn't coming, to America, and he was really just the domestic Japan star. And honestly, like, he seems thrilled with that. Yes. So like, I'm not here to take that away from him. And I think honestly right now it's probably what New Japan needs. And Naito's a guy that I think is at very low risk of leaving New Japan, right? And we've all heard the Okada rumors. Mm-hmm. And I think there's plenty to dig into there, but that's not my space. But and I think, you look at guys like Naito and you look at guys like Tanahashi that are just true lifers, and they're going to be there, and they're going to, they're in some capacity, they're going to represent New Japan. And Naito's that guy. And honestly, Sanada's I think they want Sanada to be that guy. And Sanada's got the look to be that guy. I mean, like, you put that dude on a poster, that's a look,
Yes,
like,
it is. Yeah.
You look at Sanada and you're like, yeah, that's a star. But then you listen to his promo at the end of the Road to Tokyo Dome show, and he doesn't really say anything. Even translated, he doesn't really say anything. So, and like, that's honestly what's freaking out the fan base more than anything, is that like Sanada is so laissez-faire that they're like, holy shit, is he gonna win? Like, because it's just so weird. But that's also just sort of his vibe. Too cool for school, I mean, and that's Naito's vibe too, but in a way that's really significantly more engaging. So yeah, it's got to be Naito. I honestly think the match is going to be great. These guys can go.
Yeah.
Naito, for my money, the best two matches this year. And you could pepper in some Ospreay and Omega, but were the last two matches in Naito's G1. The
Yes.
match with Ospreay was just incredible. I mean,
Incredible.
especially the ending where Ospreay really carried it through. I just thought that was so beautiful. And then, I think Naito and Okada really brought it back at the end of the G1 in the G1 final in a hot building. So I'm hopeful for that energy in the Tokyo Dome. I've got a lot of friends that are going to be there. And I think that they're gonna really bring it. So I'm excited for the match. I'm excited to see what plays out. Somehow they need to, throughout the course of that 35 minutes, they need to make us believe that Naito's losing. Right? Like they're gonna have to. There's gonna have to be that moment where everyone like us, who's like, this is a shoe-in, it's a done deal. We have to bite, right? They've got to make us bite, and if they can do that, then they're the kings of this whole thing. And honestly, these two guys probably are. They probably already know how they're going to do it.
I think they do know. I mean, I think look, Naito is an underrated. I think he's just an underrated seller in the ring, for lack of a better way to put it. I mean, he can be like the bombastic, charismatic, confident, champion pro wrestler. Yeah. But man, like you think back to the Ospreay match, you think back to that Okada match just this past year. Man, he sold that. I mean, he sold like that in both instances that he was going to lose. And I think he really can drum up sympathy with that audience that just absolutely adores him.
Yep.
He has that ability to do that. I don't see any reason why that's not going to be the story here. Like
I can't wait for that moment where like I will bite on something, a near fall or something, and I'm going to be like, they got me. Like, I'm just going to be upset about it. But I also like I love a little bit of panic. So like the Naito fan panic during that moment is going to just like bring me so much joy too, because like, you see through it, but you need to, they build that emotion, and that's the whole trick. I mean, like you said, like Naito, even in that G1 final, everyone thought he was concussed or whatever. He got knocked loopy at the end of the semi. So in the G1 final, clearly he was good enough to go. He sold that like all through the beginning of the match. He just acted like he was loopy still. And that, honestly, when life gives you lemons, right? Like, maybe, I mean, I'm pretty sure he got knocked loopy at the end of the semi.
Oh God.
But that's so classic New Japan to be like, all right, use it, but use it subtly. Right? Don't come out with like your head wrapped or something. Like you just use it as a little thing. And if people know, they know. If they don't, it's just kind of this little nugget. So yeah, I'm excited for it. Who doesn't love a Tokyo Dome main event, right? I mean, these guys are going to go out there, and honestly, the crowd in the building is going to be hot. And that's something that I'm looking forward to. Think about it. This time last year, we were talking about Wrestle Kingdom being the first cheering crowd in Japan.
I know,
like God, 3 years, man. And that feels like it was decades ago. Maybe that's me just like compartmentalizing and getting rid of all that time where I watched silent New Japan shows. But yeah, I mean, this will be. I mean, people are used to cheering again, so hopefully we get that real raucous crowd, especially for this match.
Yeah. Where does Sanada go from here? Assuming that we're right on Naito. I mean, what happens? What happens there? Because I think he's like you said, he's a guy that you can slap on a poster. He's a guy that New Japan wants to be and is working hard to be like a face of the company.
Right.
On the level of like an Okada and a Naito. I think it's just been, I don't know. He's kind of just like, the presentation and the booking is a little bit ahead of, I think, where he actually is. And look, it only takes one match, I think, to change that perception. And so maybe we're looking at this as he has a great match and things turn for him. But I still think that he's on an upper mid card level and probably not going to be a guy that kind of holds down your main events for as talented as a ring guy that he is. So all that being said, I mean, where can he go from here? What's your take on the future of Sanada?
It's an interesting question. Even if you look at this year, right? He's held the title since April. He won the or whatever. He's held the title for longer than anyone's held this new version of the top title in New Japan, the IWGP World Heavyweight title.
Mm-hmm.
And even this year, he doesn't have a signature win. I guess his only signature win is that he won the title from Okada. So even this year, they protected that. They didn't level him up with who he beat, right? He's 17-2 in singles matches, but I'm looking at the guys he beat, and no one stands out to me. No one says oh wow, that's right, they put him over this guy. Nobody's like that. So and his only loss since the title was to Evil, and I can kind of compare where I think their paths will go, right? Evil won the title a couple of years ago in 2020, right? And started House of Torture and really started some of this discourse around New Japan. But since then, he's been this guy that people panic about getting back into the world title picture. And I think in a different way, Sanada's also going to be that. It's this kind of perennial challenger, this guy that could plausibly win the title, but probably won't, right? I think this was Sanada's run. I think that in some ways they did miss the mark with how they executed it, because I think he could have been, they could have gotten him involved in the Muto retirement stuff, and they could have really elevated Sanada. Mm-hmm. And honestly, that probably would have done it, especially domestically in Japan. I know that we over here talk about Muto as a guy who really just steals the spotlight, but I think just because this run was as long as it was and through the G1, everyone saw it, and now he gets a Wrestle Kingdom main event, which is something that Evil never got. I think that he's going to be one of these guys that can plausibly win the title and can maybe win a New Japan Cup or something down the line, or just be one of those challengers that pops up through the G1, and people are going to panic about it because they think they think he's a company guy, and it's probably true, right? He's clearly a good hand, but so I think that's where he lands. I don't, storyline wise, I don't really know. Maybe this global heavyweight championship that we'll probably talk about in a moment, maybe that's his lane, that kind of secondary title thing. So it's tough to say, but he's got his own unit, right? But it's sort of also Taichi's unit, just 5 guys. Right. Also not they don't really have an identity.
It's not the greatest unit in the world.
Yeah, right. It's cool. I like the laissez-faire thing. It's almost like they're trying to recreate the LIJ stuff. Mm-hmm. But then you got Taka Michinoku's the mouth, right. I don't know. He's a legend and all, but what does that say, right? So, and honestly, Taichi's the more defining personality in the group. So, Sanada's a great tag team wrestler. He had a great run with Evil. And he, I think him and Taichi could make a great tag team. I think that's something they could maybe leverage, but I'll be one of those people that doesn't really want to see him get back into this space, but I know he'll continue to be a challenger. And that's a nice thing to have. It's a nice thing for bookers to have guys that could plausibly win that people don't want to win. Even as Sanada is not necessarily a heel like Evil, I think people just aren't going to want to see it. So,
and look, I mean, it's not that's not a bad spot to be. Look, not everybody can have the tip top spots in the company, but if you're somebody that can knock on that door and your name can be called for certain things at all times, I mean, that's a good spot.
And
everyone's gonna be Okada.
That's what he's always been. He's had a tremendous series of matches against Okada. Again, and no one, I don't know if anyone ever really thought they were going to pull the trigger, but he had that great G1 win over Okada, the longest G1 match ever on record, that actually went to a finish, and that led to the Tokyo Sports Bout of the Year that year at King of Pro Wrestling. Like, he's had a great run. He's a really good wrestler, but something about him just doesn't resonate on the personality side. And then you've got Naito on the other side of it, and Okada, right? Like, these are kind of his primary foes. And like, those are the biggest personalities in pro wrestling almost, and like, they're defined and they know what they're doing and they really have the character dialed in. So I don't see that from Sanada, but damn, does he look good on a poster, like, and honestly, that gets you pretty far in pro wrestling. It's an image game. So he'll keep popping up.
And he can wrestle. I mean, like, that's, again, he can wrestle. And, but yeah, there's just something holding him back from grabbing like that top position. But it's really not a knock. It's just calling out a fact that
it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where he is.
Yep.
All right.